Good morning. I'm Steve Feldman, president of the Astronauts Memorial Foundation. I want to welcome you here today to a ceremony remembering the 25th anniversary of the Challenger accident. Challenger STS-51L launched on January 28, 1986, carrying 7 astronauts, including the first teacher scheduled to go into space. Tragically, 73 seconds after the launch, Challenger was destroyed, and all of the astronauts on board lost their lives. Today, 25 years later, we gather here to remember and honor those astronauts. Appropriately, we do this at the site of the Space Mirror Memorial, designated by the United States Congress as the National Memorial, to honor all of those astronauts who have sacrificed their lives for our space program. Please rise for the singing of the national anthem by Susie Cunningham, a NASA employee.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you. Please be seated. We will begin today's program with an invocation presented by a member of the AMF board and a prominent author, Dr. Mick Uclea. Dr. Uclea.
Today we're here to honor and to remember, but also to celebrate 7 lives that were lived well. These individuals had families and have families, and we also remember the families and the great sacrifice of releasing their loved ones to such an intense profession to better mankind, and the even greater sacrifice of losing those that they dearly loved. These individuals were able to combine their passions, their talents, their competencies, as well as their vocation into one focus. And so for this, we honor them today, remember them, and we're also inspired by the lives that they lived. Join me in prayer. Our Father, you have created us to excel, to be all that we can be for the purpose of serving other people. We're created in your image, and so we find that we also love to create. And we subdue and we manage our environment, and we love to explore. To understand the wonders of your creation, we're called to do this, and for a rare few it even becomes dangerous, even to the point of risking their lives. And it's to those rare few that we come to honor today. The risks are well thought through. They're not reckless, but they are dangerous. We accept it. We accept that along with the promise of a better life. And so we honor them today, not only because they serve us, but also because they inspire us. Like the great explorers of old, Magellan, Columbus, and all the rest, They explored new worlds, and it was a world without completed maps or foolproof manuals because they were creating them. And so, Father, we are reminded today that there is a time for everything, a season for every activity under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted. So in the spirit of these heroic leaders, the greatest way we can honor them is to not simply live for ourselves, but to live and plant well as we serve those around us. Father, knowing that all of life is on loan from you, we thank you for loaning us these incredible lives, and we thank you that they are now safely back in your presence. Amen.
We are honored to have with us today members of the AMF Board of Directors and Trustees, astronauts, NASA officials, corporate executives, military officers, and perhaps most important to us, family members of those astronauts whom we honor. The commander of Challenger and its true leader was Dick Scobee. His wife, June, has since become one of the most respected members of the space community. Her original book about Challenger, entitled Silver Linings, The Triumph of the Challenger, was truly inspirational. She wrote a book, Moon-Based Crisis, about motivating young people to study science, technology, engineering, and math. And her most recent book, an update of Silver Linings, and really her autobiography, which is just out, is also inspirational and really something for all of us to admire. She also was founding chairman of the Challenger Centers for Space Science Education. She earns a PhD degree from Texas A&M University and has taught every grade level, from kindergarten through college. She has been interviewed on 60 Minutes, The O'Reilly Factor, The Oprah Winfrey Show, Good Morning America, and untold additional shows. She has too many awards for me to be able to mention this morning, but it is a pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. June Scobee Rodgers.
Thank you very much, Dr. Feldman, for those nice words. Makes me feel like I'm somebody. And it wasn't even my own funeral. Well, it's a nice, cool, brisk morning here. The Chamber of Commerce didn't get the message to make it a beautiful day for us to talk about Florida. Good morning. To so many of you that have joined today, thank you for coming out on this cool, brisk day to help us honor the Challenger crew, and in fact, all those names that are behind me on this beautiful mirror memorial. Well, on behalf of all the Challenger families, I'm happy to be here. We're represented by the Resnick families as well, so hello to you. I thank you for being here to help us honor our loved ones in the spirit of the mission of the Space Shuttle Challenger. It's hard to believe that 25 years has passed since that fateful day, January 1986. We know it when we look at our kids and how they've grown, and we have 9 grandchildren. But like everyone watching around the world, we were stunned to see the unspeakable unfold right before our eyes. Could this really happen? No one believed it could happen. What should have been a day heralded for education turned to tragedy in a split second. Our loved ones were gone. Our nation grieved, and our future looked uncertain. Later, years later, after we lost the beloved Columbia crew, my daughter wrote a letter to those children. She said everyone around the world saw how our Challenger crew, my dad died. They all wanted to say goodbye to American heroes. Me, I just wanted to say goodbye to my daddy. She helped those children to realize that their lives had become very public, but that keep the memories alive of their parents. Ask people that knew them to tell you stories about their dads. I remember being at the memorial service at Johnson Space Center shortly after this accident, watching this missing man formation fly over. One plane, I think you all are aware, one plane pulls up and climbs to the heavens to symbolize the loss, but the other planes continue on to carry on the mission. That's when it dawned on me. Challenger's mission, a mission to teach, was incomplete. Lessons were left untaught. Scientific and engineering problems were left unsolved. But the saddest reality was the impact on the children. The chance to really touch a child and inspire a new generation of explorers. The families of the Challenger 7 realized something very profound. If we didn't somehow continue Challenger's mission of education, then our loved ones would have died in vain. And certainly that entire crew embraced Krista McAuliffe and was known as the teacher in space mission. We couldn't let that happen, that they'd be forgotten. So we began to turn this unimaginable tragedy into a monumental triumph. The entire world knew how the Challenger crew died. We wanted the world to know how they lived and for what they were risking their lives. We, Jane Smith, Lorna Onizuka, Cheryl McNair, Marcia Jarvis, Steve McAuliffe, and Chuck Resnick, all 7 families banded together to create a cause greater than ourselves that would not only take us into the future, but help us to heal our hearts and the hearts of those in our nation. One night, only weeks after the accident, while sitting around in my living room in my home in Houston, we conceived the idea of the Challenger Center, a living tribute to our loved ones, a place that would provide America's students with access to outstanding space science educational opportunities. We envisioned activities where children, teachers, and citizens alike could touch the future, manipulating equipment, conducting scientific experiments, solving problems, working together, immersing themselves in a space-like surroundings, and growing accustomed to the space technology. Our hope was to spark in our young people an interest and a joy in science, a spark that could change their lives. Our vision became reality. When you visit a Challenger Center, you'll see children climb aboard a child-sized space simulator with their teacher and fly a simulated space mission into the future. There they are challenged to apply skills in math and science while working together as a team to complete a successful mission. They learn critical skills needed for the 21st century: teamwork, dealing with adversity, solving problems, and the fundamentals of human interaction. We launched our first Challenger Center in Houston. Today we've grown to a network of 48 Challenger Centers throughout America, as well as in Canada, South Korea, and England. And later today I'll join those folks at the Challenger Learning Center in Houston to celebrate that memory, which I do every year. I go to a Challenger Center to see children doing what our beloved Challenger space crew loves so much. Well, each year more than 400,000 school students visit one of our centers and experience the thrill and excitement of space exploration. And with our new chairman, Scott Perezinski, I think that number will double in no time. And in the past 25 years, we have reached more than 4 million children. We have strong partnerships with NASA and other federal agencies. Numerous universities and aerospace contractors help us keep our curriculum current through our ongoing evaluation and consultation. And leadership on our board of directors has laid a solid foundation for growth in numerous directions. So you see, Challenger wasn't the final chapter in the book of space exploration, just a transition chapter in this great book. Nor is Space Shuttle the final chapter. As I wrote, and like any good school teacher, I brought my prop along. As I wrote in the Silver Linings book, we are not a nation of naysayers. We are a nation of believers. We are innovators and problem solvers. And yes, risk takers, with a pioneering spirit that began with our forefathers who sailed from Europe to establish and colonize our nation, and then boldly expanded west, exploring, discovering, and building our country. Technology gave us automobiles and locomotives. Then we slipped the early bonds of Earth into airplanes and built the rockets to launch us on the highway to space. We, as a nation, are indebted to the space pioneers who blazed a trail of exploration and discovery. Here at Kennedy Space Center, you've witnessed decades of launch successes, from early Mercury 7 astronauts with Alan Shepard, the Gemini excitement of John Glenn, and the historic days of Apollo and moon landings when we were all glued to the flickering black and white televisions to watch the first steps of Armstrong and Aldrin upon the moon. Then came the shuttle, a space transportation system, a plane with sparkling white wings, designed by creative engineers to launch like a rocket toward the heavens, orbit the Earth, build the International Space Station, launch satellites, collect astonishing images from Hubble, and you've seen those most recently, make discoveries and grow our knowledge, and then glide safely back home to Earth. After Dick Scobee and his fellow astronauts were selected in the first class of 35 shuttle astronauts, I no longer watched the launch of space vehicles from afar. I watched them standing right here with him at Kennedy. We watched the engines ignite and felt that thunderous roar as the first shuttle Columbia lifted off carrying brave astronauts, John Young and my dear friend Bob Crippen, who's here with us today. It was sheer exhilaration that our family of astronauts shared their experiences with us. One was a particularly personal joy after my husband piloted the successful 41C Solar Max mission. Now, it is sad to see the shuttle story approaching the close of its chapter in this mighty history book of space exploration, but the book will continue with new exciting chapters about space programs and more advanced space vehicles to carry us into the next chapters of exciting adventures, discoveries, and achievement, and will benefit and advance the people of our planet. And a new legacy of Challenger Center students will be there, and they'll be ready to accept the challenge of space exploration anew. Why? Because we have whole planets to explore, and we have new worlds to build. In the Silver Linings book, I draw together this rich history of the space program from the early days of von Braun rockets, my teenage Sputnik days, and the discoveries made by NASA astronauts and scientists, to the explorers of today, including this interesting emerging role of private space travel. Returning to our day of remembrance, perhaps President Reagan said it best 25 years ago when, in place of his scheduled State of the Union address, he spoke to a grieving nation. He took care to speak to the children who were watching the live coverage of shuttle's launch. He said, "I know it's hard to understand, but sometimes painful things like this happen. It's all a part of the process of exploration and discovery. It's all part of taking a chance and expanding man's horizons. The future doesn't belong to the faint-hearted. It belongs to the brave. The Challenger crew was pulling us into the future, and we'll continue to follow them." The president concluded his remarks, "We will never forget them, or the last time we saw them, this morning as they prepared for their journey and waved goodbye and slipped the surly bonds of earth to touch the face of God." That was then. And their names are beautifully emblazoned on the mirror. But this is now. It's time for the next 25 years to unfold. Let us boldly look to the future with a vision built upon our rich heritage of space pioneers. What's on the next horizon for our nation and planet? Well, in 48 cities today, school children will fly a space simulation mission, a Challenger mission, that inspires and motivates them in the sciences and technology, engineering, and math. These children and others are our future engineers and scientists who will build new vehicles to fly in space. Physicians and teachers who will make scientific breakthroughs to improve our lives. And they represent future space explorers who will create the highway to our planets and beyond, who will travel to the unknown to make the discoveries that expand our knowledge and build a better world and keep it safe. Recently, I wrote with famous authors Kevin Anderson and Rebecca Mosta, this is my other prop, a series of young adult science fiction books about the star challengers. Oh, these books are fun. And with a famous science fiction author, they're well received. It's about kids who discover just how important it is to learn the skills of science and math to advance space exploration and keep our planet safe. And they're a lot of fun because they have a mysterious Commander Zota who takes them into the future. Well, and it's here at Kennedy that we stand beneath this astronaut memorial mirror, inscribed with our names of our loved ones, Challenger as well as those of Columbia and Apollo, names that represent people who gave their lives serving the country they loved. We honor them with our presence at this ceremony, and you honor yourselves for paying tribute to them on this day, 25 years after their loss, on this, their silver anniversary. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mike McCully is chairman of the board of directors of the Astronauts Memorial Foundation. He is also a former astronaut and shuttle pilot. He is also a retired Navy captain and test pilot. He went on to become an executive at United Space Alliance and ultimately became president and CEO of that corporation. It's my pleasure to introduce Mike McCully.
My first words this morning were going to be, I am triply blessed to be here this morning. But I'm going to add something in. It's quadruply, actually. As Bob Cabana and I sat here a moment ago and looked out over the audience, there's 25 years of center directors in this audience, 7 of them. I would suggest that you guys get together afterwards and get a group photo because you'll never do this one again, I don't think. So the triply blessed, though. First, as a relatively new astronaut in the mid-'80s, I was blessed to know and support and work with the Challenger crew. And it was a privilege that I will never forget. Then in the return to flight days, I began to understand more about the system and the program and the sacrifices and what we had to do. And in those days, I spent a lot of time in Washington. And my favorite thing to do in the mornings was to go jog around the Memorial Mall. And I would get to the Lincoln Memorial. And I would stop and I would run up the steps, and turn to the left, because the Gettysburg Address is on the wall to the left. And I would sit down on the granite and read aloud the Gettysburg Address. The guards thought I was weird for a while, but they got used to me after a while. And tourists would look at me and point, but I would read it. Well, then later on, the second blessing came when I had the opportunity to fly the space shuttle. And the space shuttle that I flew was far more effective, far safer, far better than the one that had gone before me. And the sacrifice of these 7 contributed greatly to me being able to fly in a far safer, far better, far more effective space shuttle. Now, Today, as the chairman of the board of the Astronaut Memorial Foundation, is an additional privilege and blessing to be here with you today to do this. But as I was thinking about what my message ought to be as the chairman, you know, I could have made a long speech, or I could make almost a no speech, but in those days when I was in Washington and would sit up there and read the Gettysburg Address out loud, there was a certain part of it that began to take a different meaning for me during the return to flight days. And in closing, I want to read that part of the Gettysburg Address. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain. Thank you, and God bless.
Bob Cabana is director of the Kennedy Space Center and provides leadership to all of the personnel at the center. He is also a former astronaut who has flown into space 4 times, twice as a shuttle pilot and twice as a shuttle commander. He is a retired Marine Corps colonel and a former test pilot. It's my honor to introduce Bob Cabana.
Well, it's really an honor for me to be here today to help honor those behind me on this mirror. You know, those of us who are old enough to remember, we can probably tell you exactly where they were or what they were doing, the morning of January 28th, 1986, when we lost the Space Shuttle Challenger and her crew of 7. Much like the assassination of President Kennedy, the Apollo 11 landing on the moon, September 11th, 2001, all of these are moments that define our history. I was a newly selected astronaut candidate with 7 months of training under my belt, taking a class in one of the single systems trainers, learning about the orbiter's orbital maneuvering system and reaction control systems when we lost Challenger. When our class was interrupted to tell us what had happened, there was sheer disbelief. We were unwilling to accept the news that had been given to us, that we had really lost an orbiter and its crew. Surely they'd aborted. They had it wrong. We didn't lose the crew. But watching the launch over and over again on TV, reality set in, and it was a really bad day. As an astronaut candidate, 5 of us in my class shared an office next door to the 51L Challenger crew. And one of my absolute fondest memories is of El Anazuka one Saturday morning. Now, in the astronaut office, there's nothing lower than an astronaut candidate. And an assigned crew member a few months from flight surely doesn't have time to dedicate to any of us. But El did. Early on, he made me feel welcome. He took time from his busy schedule to talk with me and help me get settled in the office and in the community. This one Saturday morning coming up, I met him at the top of the stairs and I said, "Hey, Bob, how you doing?" And he says, "Hey, if you ever need to work on your car, bring it over to my garage. I know you're not settled yet. I got all the tools that you need, and I'll help you." I mean, that's a memory that I will treasure forever. Once we accepted the loss, the long process of understanding what happened and bringing us back to flight began. As we recovered the vehicle from the sea, the stories started coming together. Seeing the pieces of the crew compartment laid out on the cement here at the Kennedy Space Center out in the open, recording the switch positions of the consoles in the crew compartment was a very sobering task. It's no way to bring a space shuttle home. And unfortunately, it wasn't the last time we would have to do it. We learned many lessons from the loss of Challenger. And the vehicle that returned to flight 2.5 years later may have looked the same, but had hundreds of changes to make it safer and more reliable. The Challenger crew will be forever young in our minds. Their legacy is the Challenger Centers and an inspiration that motivates our children to learn and aspire to careers in math, science, and engineering. They've shown us that exploration is not without risk, but that we can learn from our mistakes and be better for them in the end. They continue to urge us forward, to explore and to never quit, just because it's hard. We are better for having known them. They are a part of us forever, and we will not let them down. We will continue to strive to be better, to explore, to expand our knowledge of our universe, and to reach beyond. Thank you.
The Astronauts Memorial Foundation honors those astronauts who have made the ultimate sacrifice for the space program. We do this, of course, with the Space Mirror Memorial, but also with our educational initiatives, which serve as a living memorial to those astronauts. Alan Shepard was the first American in space. He was one of only 12 human beings to have walked on the moon, and he was one of the early members of the board of directors of the Astronauts Memorial Foundation, and a very active and important member. Upon his death, we established the Alan Shepard Technology and Education Award, which is presented every year to a K through 12 educator who has made an outstanding contribution in educational technology. It's presented jointly by AMF, NASA, and the Space Foundation. The 2009 winner of the Alan Shepard Award was Rick Soria, who was assistant principal of Choctawhatchee High School in Fort Walton Beach. Rick was selected for his role in creating the Engineers for America program, an innovative initiative that motivates students to major in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics by having them experience hands-on aviation and aerospace activities. It's a pleasure to introduce a winner of the Alan Shepard Technology and Education Award, Rick Soria.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. A few years ago, an engineering friend of mine told me that we were short over 60,000 native-born engineers in the Department of Defense. We got to thinking about that and did some research. We found that we lose many of those students at about the 4th or 5th grade. So our initiative targets that student population. The Okaloosa County School District, where I work, has partnered with the United States Air Force Armament Museum at Eglin to develop STEM experiments for students based on the aerospace exhibits that are on display at the museum. The Alan Shepard Award has helped us advance our efforts greatly. First, in November of 2009, the Astronauts Memorial Foundation partnered with me to perform the STS-125 Mission Accomplished project. 50 high school students from 4 neighboring high schools participated. The AMF team of Walt Jaworski and Gene Tavares taught these students how to create movies on DVDs for their schools based on the STS-125 mission. Then last year, the National Science Teachers Association included an article describing our STEM initiative and methodology in their national newspaper. As a result, we received emails from teachers across the country asking us about our experiments and how we went about doing them. Then last July, the STEM Florida folks were kind enough to recognize our efforts with their Improved Student Outcomes Award. This was followed by an article in a recent Florida Monthly magazine identifying me as one of 21 intriguing Floridians for developing EFA. News must be slow. The Alan Shepard Award, in our collaboration with the Astronauts Memorial Foundation, is making a difference in the education of students and teachers. To date, almost 100 teachers and over 3,000 students have been to the museum to perform our experiments. Teachers report that students are genuinely engaged in learning STEM concepts. Students also display a growing interest in STEM, and in their assessments, they demonstrate improved academic achievement after their museum visits. But the award has especially encouraged our sponsors. We are funded exclusively by grants. We are not full-timers. We all do this on our own time. The Shepard Award has been instrumental in attracting sponsors such as the National Defense Education Program, the Boeing Company, the National Defense Industrial Association, Target Stores, and others to provide us grant funding. In fact, one of our contacts with the National Defense Education Program is working to get our lessons online so teachers everywhere can have access to them. So clearly, the Alan Shepard Award has provided us a great deal of attention and resource support, and we are truly grateful. John Rodgers, the superintendent of a neighboring school district, once noted, "All students can fly, some just need a longer runway." The AMF and the Shepard Award, along with our sponsors, are helping us build longer runways for many students. On this day, when we remember the Challenger crew and those who have made the ultimate sacrifice in our nation's exploration of space, it is fitting to pause and challenge each other to become more involved in the STEM education of our students. In the 80s, NASA scientists, astronauts, and engineers collaborated with educators by inviting a teacher into space. Today, the Astronauts Memorial Foundation collaborates with educators by supporting STEM initiatives like our Engineers for America. And together, we remain committed to the STEM education of our students. By this continuing collaboration, we believe that the Challenger mission, vision, and memory live on in each of our students. The Alan Shepard Award has been and will continue to be instrumental in helping us achieve our Engineers for America STEM goals. But we need your help too. Each of us need to do our part to ensure America's continued technological and defense supremacy. Every teacher knows that there are few endeavors more rewarding than the education of the next generation of American explorers. So I'm asking each of you to partner with us and to get involved in the STEM education in your community schools. We need to start today because the future beckons. Thank you.
Thank you. William Gerstenmaier is the Associate Administrator for Space Operations at NASA. He directs NASA's human exploration of space. He has programmatic oversight for the International Space Station, Space Shuttle, space communications, and space launch vehicles. He has been a close friend of the Astronauts Memorial Foundation and has attended every ceremony of any type that we've had for the past decade. It's my honor to introduce William Gerstenmaier.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here to speak with you today, again this year. This is the most difficult speech that I give. This speech becomes much more than words as I reflect on the failings of the human spaceflight team. I was present at NASA and involved with the Space Shuttle and Space Station at both the Challenger and Columbia disasters. Today, I remain an active part of the human spaceflight team, and the lessons learned from those tragedies are not academic or simple lessons, but are lessons that must be implemented and learned every day. It's not easy to look back and reflect. The crews lost were my friends, co-workers, and I saw an engineering team that I love fail. After Challenger, I dedicated myself to never allowing another tragedy to occur. However, Columbia occurred. I failed, and the team failed. The seeds of Columbia failure were present with STS-1, and we missed them. We learned that little things that seem harmless can become catastrophic events. We need to be ever vigilant and remember that we are human. And as humans, we will make errors, and we need to ask for help and check and double-check our work. We cannot let the fear of failure stop us from doing the challenging and risky work of discovery. I see the courage of the families. I see the good work that can come from the tragedies such as the Challenger Center and their efforts with student education. I also know the wonderful and almost impossible things that this human spaceflight team can accomplish. The human spaceflight team has learned tremendous lessons from these events. There is no better team in the world than the human spaceflight team, and we are no better than we pull together and stay focused. The ability to come back stronger from adversity gives me the strength to work with the teams and press on with new discoveries and see things such as the International Space Station come to life. 130 years ago, the world's first purely scientific expedition set sail from Portsmouth, England, on a 4-year, 70,000-mile journey. During the course of the voyage, the discoveries of the scientists and crew formed the basis of the current knowledge of the oceans that cover 3/4 of our planet, including the deepest section of the ocean that was ever discovered and was named for the ship that discovered it. These discoveries were not free. These discoveries were part of the HMS Challenger, who returned to port without a large portion of their crew. These discoveries were not easy, and we pressed on. 25 years ago, another ship named Challenger left port, fated not to return with the crew that she sailed. This crew, our co-workers, friends, teachers, sons, daughters, mothers, fathers, boarded a ship named to honor the legacy of exploration and the pursuit of human knowledge, our most sacred pursuit, with the goal of accomplishing the same. Their sacrifice was a stark, brutal reminder that our knowledge, our technology, our science, and our dreams are often paid for in the dearest possible way. This has been the case throughout human history and will be the case as long as we're willing to push the boundaries of our capabilities towards destinations of which we can only dream. What we do as explorers is not easy. Michael, Dick, Ronald, Ellison, Krista, Gregory, and Judy knew this and accepted the risk. We who remain on the ground and asked them to fly failed them that day, as we would fail the crew of Columbia 17 years later, and as we failed the crew of Apollo 1 19 years before. The only possible compensation that we can offer is our renewed devotion to the jobs we have been asked to do by the nation to explore the universe that surrounds us. We seek to answer the most difficult questions imaginable and formulate new questions. The Hubble telescope is rewriting astronomy textbooks every day. The farthest seen galaxy was just reported yesterday. The space station is providing insight into basic biological processes that will change the way we understand biology and affect our health here on the Earth. Apollo, Challenger, and Columbia were not the first ships to carry those names, and they will not be the last. Every generation stands on the shoulders of the generation that came before, not on the shoulders of giants, but of ordinary men and women who performed to the best of their knowledge and abilities and often failed. The legacy of those we have lost will be in the dedication to never repeat the mistakes and learn from those mistakes and learn to anticipate future problems that are yet unknown. Do not only listen to my words today, but stop today, reflect on the events of the past, digest, analyze, distill the real learning from these events. Tuck this learning away in your heart and use it every day in all that you are doing. Do not be afraid of failing. Do not foolishly press on, but rather rededicate yourselves to expanding the frontier of knowledge in a manner that is fitting of the huge sacrifice made by those who have gone before us. Thank you.
We appreciate the fact that all of you have taken the time to be with us today, to honor and remember the great men and women whom we lost on Challenger. As we look up at this wall behind me, we also remember the crews of Apollo 1 and Columbia and the T-38 accidents, as well as all of the other astronauts who made the ultimate sacrifice for our nation and our space program. We pray for the successes of all of our future astronauts who continue to lead us into this last frontier. To conclude today's ceremony, I would like to ask June Scobee Rodgers and Bill Gerstenmaier to place a wreath at the base of the memorial under the names of the Challenger crew. Thank you all for coming, and have a safe trip home. Thank you.